Oh, coming in hot.
I think so. Third mic drop. Get going here on senior day. It's always one of those days that is tough because you say goodbye to a group of guys. This year is probably especially challenging from the standpoint for a couple of reasons. One, my son's in it, and that's a little different. And secondly, this is a group that laid a foundation and helped build. It'll be a group I won't forget. Not that I forget any of them, but this one in particular, they've been through a lot of hardships. There's been a lot of roadblocks, speed bumps, and adversity, but a lot of growth. And to see someone like Andres Feliz, Tyler, Sammy, Kipper, guys that have played a lot, some that haven't played as much, but been an integral part from leadership, from the job they do in practice, and they've been there and they've stuck with it. And this group is a big part of the character piece that we've tried to establish here with Illinois basketball. And each one of them has a special place and has done great things in their time here, and they've got their degrees. Tyler's case, he'll have his master's degree. So it's a pretty special group. Along with that, 5 managers. We're blessed when it comes to great managers. Patrick Biddle's our head manager. We go right on down the list with DA, Maddie, who handled a lot of our video, Robbie, who am I missing? Macklin. That group of guys and gals have been phenomenal in the amount of time. They're the most selfless people on our campus. I say that from 6 a.m. to whatever, to minus 57 below, unloading the bus, to get it on the plane in Minneapolis, to the travels abroad, the time away, all while being students and active participants in what is a lot of work. And so I'm forever grateful to that group of guys and gals and manager and the job they do. So be a great day. Be a great day for those 9 or 10 guys and Maddie, to remember their time here at Illinois and with our program.
You talked recently about Andres' winning in the past. We know his talent, but they also seem to be about what you're about, with toughness.
The piece to that was he was a little bit older. He wasn't a 17, 18-year-old high school kid coming in here. He had experience. He had won a national championship. And that maturity has helped a great deal. There were obstacles for him. The language, learning another program. It wasn't always easy for him, but his character and his toughness have always won out, and stood at the forefront of everything that Dre stands for. And, you talk about a young man with maturity level, being married. You talk about a young man that has to fight every day academically, with the English language and attend a world-class university and get his degree in May. So, it goes well beyond the basketball court with him.
So how does Brad Underwood dad handle tomorrow?
I always get emotional anyway. I don't know if I will be or not. I'm so happy for him that he's getting 2 degrees from here, from this university. You know, he was a young man who's probably sacrificed a lot of his playing career to play for me. You know, he was recruited. He could have had other places to go. He went to play for me at Stephen F. He tore his ACL in his senior year, in the last, you know, right before the last game, and then to go with us to Oklahoma State, to then be here, and you know, he's a better player than people give him credit for being, because he just hasn't been on the court at the highest level. But his value in the locker room, and then it's, you know, I say it every day, you're truly blessed when you can go to the court and see your son every day and dap him up and say hello and kid around and have fun and enjoy the moments in locker rooms and enjoy the tears in locker rooms and I, you know, so I imagine I'm going to try to be really, really happy, you know, for him, because he's had, you know, I think a very, very unique experience, and you know, he's had to overcome a lot because of his dad, 3 high schools, really kind of took him away from a lot of AAU basketball. You know, there were a lot of challenges that my kids, not just him, but my kids have had to overcome because of dad's profession. So, but you talk about proud, I'll be all of that for sure.
I would think maybe that was it a challenge for you in the sense that A, you wanted to spend time with Tyler, but B, knowing that he had turned down opportunities to play at different places. I mean, I guess what was that feeling like when it started to develop?
Well, we talked about that in high school, and you know, I never wanted Tyler to play basketball because I played or because I coached, and I wanted him to play because it was a passion, and it was something he loved, and he had to make those decisions on his own. And you know, we did talk about it. You know, I think that there's no doubt if we had stayed at SFA, he would have been, or had he stayed, he'd be playing there. You know, he would help teams at that level. And he's high IQ. But he's also been a tremendous protector of his younger sisters. He's also, you know, in a lot of ways was the man of the house when I was gone, and very, very protective of his mother, and you know, probably as good a big brother and probably as good a son as anyone could ask for. So you know, through all those moves, I think he's always had a more personal family obligation than a basketball one. And you know, he'd probably have to answer that part, but I think that's the case. I mean, he still calls his mom every day and texts with his sisters every day, just making sure they're okay.
Just you know, watching Samson in like pregame warm-ups and just how physical he can dunk. Just what has he brought, maybe just that every day in practice into this team? Yeah,
and you know, you're talking about an elite athlete, and I say this a lot. You know, had Sammy been at the Southland level, or I mean a lower level, I mean he was going to be a tremendous player. There are very few athletes, jumping wise, that can do what he does, and you know, he's turned into a physical specimen in the weight room. I mean, he's extremely strong. He can give us multiple looks from the scout team. He's a young man who, when I first got here, to be very honest, was a below average shooter, who's now turned into a pretty good shooter. So he's continued to work. Sammy's everything that the student athlete experience is about. A great student and just a dedicated teammate, and he's been a joy to have around. He's been a joy to have around the locker room, and you know, then he works his tail off on the court and has never causes a peep of a problem, and just does what he's asked to do.
You mentioned the language barrier twice in talking about Dre the other day. You made a joke about Spanglish. In fact, he's really come a long way since he arrived on this campus.
No doubt.
In terms of that language. And furthermore, he now has an American wife, an American child, and apart from maybe a speed bump in getting to Italy, he's kind of he's living the American dream. Would you talk about how much he's changed in terms of his?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to not grow when you're at an institution like Illinois, and then when you throw the basketball piece on top of it, there's certain challenges there. Every coach can have their own terminology and understanding, and what he grew up with may be termed a different term than I use, or that his junior college coach used, or whatever. So there's complications with that. But I always think to myself, well, what would I be doing if I was in school in the Dominican Republic and just learning Spanish? How would I succeed? And how frustrating that would be for me, and how tough you would have to be to persevere through all of that. And yet, over the course of time, you're going to gain knowledge and you're going to gain understanding. He's a very bright young man. He's a guy that picks things up very, very quickly. His basketball IQ and feel have helped him transcend on the court and made that adjustment probably easier than on the academic side. But you're talking about a young man who's very, very mature, a young man who's very driven. And I've always said this, that it didn't take very long to figure out whatever Andres does and whatever path he chooses beyond basketball, you want him with you. You want him on your side. He's going to make it, and you don't ever have to worry. He's going to fight. He's got grit. He's smart. He figures things out, and he does the right things and makes life's choices that are correct, and there's a maturity about that. So he's grown in a lot of ways.
Right. Can you kind of walk through Kipper's journey from the time you got here? Your first season, he averaged double-digit scoring. Now, just kind of him embracing that role as a solid role player off the bench.
Yeah, and I think it's the evolution of maybe how our program's grown. I've always loved Kipper's personality, his being, his character, I think a lot was, and I demanded a lot from Kip early. And not that I don't now, but it's been, he was an integral part of that first group. There was carryover. He played half a season the year before, had some success, and was a solid piece for us. But his personality is the reason why I want to make sure he was back. I thought he was a guy that fit and was doing a lot of the right things off the court, working hard at his academics. He loved to play. He was always in the gym. That's the one thing that will always stand out with Kip. It still does to this day. And then for whatever the reason, kind of had a lull his junior year, and I wish I could explain that. And went through a shooting funk, and probably with that came some decreased minutes, but his experience, has allowed him to continue to stay on the floor. His leadership in the locker room, his buy-in. Kip's always the guy with a smile on his face, a hug, a pat on the back. He's a glass half full guy, constantly, and so that's kind of transcended into his role this year. He's been as valuable as anybody on our team this year, and you're talking about a fifth-year senior, a guy who's older, and been through a lot of battles and a lot of games, and I'm really proud of him earning his degree and his ability to have kind of a big part of this team in terms of a different role than what it initially was, and he's handled that great.
Hey, Brad, in the back, you mentioned the double degrees for Tyler, obviously a bachelor's in sociology, master's in recreation, sport, tourism, RST. Would you mind, you mentioned a little bit, but would you mind expanding what that means to you and Susan, what he's accomplished academically off the court?
Yeah, you know, there's been a lot of challenges for Ty, and you know, we lose track of the simple things, you know, and I'm gonna back up just a little bit on that to his high school. You know, he's, you know, what high school class reunion do you go back to? You know, you really don't have a group of friends that you just dialed in with, you know, and he graduated from Nacogdoches. He was there a couple of years. He spent 1 year at Manhattan High School. He spent 1 year at Heathwood Hall in Columbia, South Carolina. Here's the great thing about all that. You know, one of his best friends from Nacogdoches is now Quay Jones, our GA. He stays in a ton of contact with his high school coach at Heathwood Hall in South Carolina. He's still got Neil Gonta, who I've talked about at length, helped us with our analytics stuff. His best friend from high school and growing up in Manhattan, and those are the relationships that are really important. So as a elite university as we are, I'm proud. He went to SFA. He goes to Oklahoma State. He's a business major. He's ahead because he had taken a bunch of college credit in high school, and then he transfers here. And guess what? He can't get into the School of Business because of the transfer. So now it's, what do I do with my life? What do I do with, you know? And there's another hiccup in his roadblock, but I mean, he just plows ahead, and didn't let that deter him. And now getting a master's degree was important. You know, being around basketball is important. I think that's the path, the passion that he has. But I think all of those experiences and all of those stops have made him a pretty mature, pretty worldly young guy that you know, he'll probably tackle the coaching profession or the basketball in some sense. But I think all those things have helped him. I'm so proud of him, and yet, you know, I knew I provided some challenges, but man, he's handled it like a champion.
You just kind of mentioned what I was going to ask. Have you guys talked about coaching together in the future?
We haven't had that specifically. You know, I've got really, you know, sometimes you get to a point where you kind of, you know, his mother will disagree. You need to get away, you know, and you need to go see and do some other things. I know what his passion is. I know I mean, we talk ball, we watch film. You know, the other night after the Ohio State games, he comes up and sits with me on the plane and watches the game with me. We talk ball. He talks it with all of our coaches. He talks it with everybody who will put up with a kid coming up asking questions. And you know, old coaches that I've had, he calls, he talks to. So I know that's what he's going to do. We'll have to see how his career. He needs to go struggle, and I mean that in a good way. He needs to go find out what this business is like, and it's not all. It's not all roses. It's not all, you know, coaching at Illinois. You know, it's Dodge City Community College on a $12,000 salary, and figuring out, you know, how you're gonna eat and where you're gonna recruit, and, you know, having to pull on the side of the road and take a nap because you're tired and it's 2 o'clock in the morning. So he needs some of that in his life.
This is a game, Iowa, the scuffle at the end of the last game, playing for the double bye, senior day. How do you guys keep all of that in check and still come out and perform?
Well, they're really good, and you know, in my opinion, you know, they've got the best player in our league, has been the most consistently really good player. I don't know how many. I think he's 20 or 21 games over 20. You know, Luke is going to get points. You know, we were right there. We had a 4-point lead with 5 to go last time. I don't think any of those other distractions will bother us. I think it'll be about the game once the ball gets tipped. You know, we didn't stop in the last 5 minutes. We committed silly fouls, and Wieskamp and Frederick made some shots and hurt us, but we've got to be better than we were the first time if we want to win tomorrow.
You mentioned how Kipper and his roles have just evolved throughout his career at Illinois, but how has just your two's relationship just evolved since you first got here and first started just talking to Kipper, and then just to see him walk on senior day tomorrow? Just how's that relationship evolved?
It's evolved. There's no question, and I think everybody would know that I challenged Kipper a lot the first year, and you've got to find out what people are about, and you got to find out, especially when you take over, who's with you and who's against you, who's both feet in, and Kipper's always been that, and I think it makes it more special for me to see, hey, he's one of us. He's one of mine, and he's going to be that guy that can pick up the phone and call and know that he's got help however he needs it, and I think that's part of the special part anyway of being a college athlete. You get pushed, you expand your boundaries, you get pushed beyond your boundaries, and I did that with Kip, and I think there's tremendous loyalty on my part towards him and tremendous trust towards him, and I'm ecstatic for him, and it's fun. There's a reason I enjoy that smile, and he and I have a great relationship.
Has it been kind of annoying to see that smile sometimes too when you're trying to get on him, and then at the same, he's always still just smiling through it?
Well, I don't want him to smile at the other team, I think that's, but yeah, Kipper is who he is, and that quality is going to last a lifetime for him, and I think that's why Kipper is the guy that everybody likes, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Is there anything you can take from Thursday's game? Ohio State, big man that can stretch the floor, shooters around it, and then apply that tomorrow with an Iowa team that's at least kind of bare bones wise pretty similar?
Well, we got to rebound. I think that's the one thing that frustrated me the most about Thursday was for whatever reason, boy, we just stood. We didn't pursue balls, and that goes from not just Kofi, that goes from Iowa to Trent. We've been chasing out all those balls, and we didn't do that. We were great. We took one of the hottest three-point shooting teams. They made 3 from 3, and it wasn't they hurt us from twos. It was our passiveness, and I mean literally passiveness on the defensive end, which created all the fouls. And we weren't aggressive. We were a step late. We weren't flying around, and that put us in a bad spot both on the glass and it put us in a bad spot in terms of fouling. And when you foul, like I said, I think 12th, 13th in the country in the fewest fouls, and that's going to be a big key tomorrow. You look at Iowa, and you don't want to put them on the line because they make free throws at a high clip.
On the chance this is his last game at State Farm Center, if somebody asked you what it was like to coach Iowa, what do I need to know about what it was like to coach Iowa, what would be your answer?
Iowa's, that's a blessing. It's fun to coach guys that are really talented. It's fun to coach guys that work as hard as he works. It's, I've said this, Iowa's a unique guy, and there are very few social habits. His life is basketball, and he works extremely hard at basketball. You love that commitment, you love that dedication, and here's a guy that's believes in the University of Illinois and has believed in our coaches and our program, and we'll see where that goes from there.
I know you enjoy hypotheticals and looking down the road, but
Oh yeah, they're my favorite pipe. Yeah, just really.
in the case that it is his last game, did you say anything different to him going into a game like this?
Nope. Just do what you do, man.
One more. I wanted to ask about Andres. I know he was signed to go to USF with Orlando, so he knew everything about him. But for you, when was the first time you saw him? Do you remember that? And your first impressions of him when you got to see him?
Yeah, it was at his junior college practice. It was 20 minutes before. I'm sitting down on the side of the court. He's got a freshman big man that he is working pick and rolls with by himself, throwing lobs to him. And I kept I said, is he doing that for himself, or he's doing? He goes, no. He said that's helping helping that big kid. I mean, he was coaching him on planting his top foot and sprinting out of it, and you're like, you I'll never forget it. I mean, that's an incredible first impression. And he watched his practice, and I mean, he literally ran the practice, and was telling guys what we're running and what we're doing, and defensively rotations. And I mean, you saw his maturity level, you saw his IQ, his leadership abilities, and that's stood out in a very positive way.
So with one game left for everybody in the Big Ten, is it fitting maybe for this season in particular that there's still 128 different scenarios where the seedings
I'm
can shake out?
I'm glad you know that. Probably fitting the way, as good as this league is, and as this league's gone, and I can't. It's interesting. I mean, there's no doubt we're by far and away the best league, and I don't care what other team in the country you put in this league, they're going to be in the same situation that all 10, 12, 14 of us are in. I mean, and you're going to have losses, you're going to get beat, and everybody's gone through those ups and downs, and it's only fitting that we'll start seeing some games today and tomorrow, and we'll all figure it out late Sunday night or Monday morning, and then it wouldn't surprise me if anybody in this league could win in Indianapolis. It wouldn't shock me. It's that kind of year, that kind of league, and it makes it exciting.
Brad? No. Did Tyler walk when he graduated this summer?
He was walking.
Yeah.
Yeah. When he graduated in August?
Yeah.
Were you there?
Yeah.